Well, good to have you back in the rig coming down the road with us. We got some things we want to do today. Jody Smith was an individual we spoke to a little bit earlier I don't know if it was in the month or if it was last month, but she is the Director of Lands and Compliance. But the big thing that she's working on is with the Metro Flood Diversion Authority. And of course, there's a lot of talk about the use of eminent domain and where that's going, a kind of a quick take issue, and we'll visit about that. The Minnesota legislative session is underway. Bill Werner, of course, our best contact with the Minnesota News Network, is going to join us as well. Now, the news coming out of Jamestown is that one of everybody's favorite professors has decided to throw her hat into the ring for the United States Senate. Katrina Christiansen is just that person. Let's get her on and get a chance to visit with Katrina and talk to her a little bit about her race and quite frankly, why she's doing it. Katrina, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Joel. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Sorry.
What's that, Katrina? I'm sorry.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I've got you loud and clear. So,
all right, great.
Let's do this. Let's just get to it right away. Why are you running for the United States Senate?
Well, as I told you when we talked earlier in the week, I am deeply concerned about my community and the state not being represented by Hoevens. He is really silent. In fact, I think there was a Bismarck Tribune article yesterday that essentially said, yeah, he's a quiet conservative in D.C., and that's not what North Dakota needs. North Dakota needs somebody who's going to be loud about tackling the issues that we care about: healthcare, education, energy, and ag.
Well, let's get into that a little bit, because it's been my experience with John Hoevens that you can ask a direct question and not get a direct answer. And I've had a chance to visit with Rick Becker, who's taking him on for that Republican nomination, and albeit a long shot, and I usually get a direct answer. The public might not always like that answer or the frankness of it, but at least you get an answer. So let's focus for this discussion on the incumbent. Let's focus on John Hoevens. When you look at his record, what do you see?
Well, first of all, he voted to repeal the ACA without anything to replace it, right? The most recent thing that he did, as the United States Senator, right, they are responsible for fulfilling the fiscal responsibilities of the government. And he failed to vote for the debt ceiling increase, right, and the continuing resolution last October, right? It was a nail biter, right up to the minute, right? I called Hoevens' office in October and asked why he was going to vote against it. And his answer was that he was concerned about inflation. And he wanted to make sure that when people did have money, it was worth more. And it was just appalling to me that he had this golden handcuffs approach to making decisions of things like Social Security for our seniors. He really doesn't understand what it's like to live as a normal person on a fixed budget. I told the office about what people who have to make decisions about what to spend money on do. I have a story. I know somebody that this happened to, right? They were on Medicare, they had Social Security, right? But they still didn't have enough to get by. So they started to cut their pills in half. Okay, so when they started to do that, they actually went into congestive heart failure. And the person that depended on care from them had to be admitted to a nursing home. That person died of pneumonia in the nursing home. So desperate people do desperate things, and Hoevens doesn't get it. And his votes show that he doesn't get it. He doesn't take it seriously when there are $180 million worth of Social Security payments on the line on a vote. You don't bite your nose off to spite your face.
Do you believe, Katrina, that this has to do with his upbringing, with his wealth? I mean, John Hoevens is one of the richest men prior to even running for office that North Dakota is ever going to see. Do you think that there's just a separation in what people need versus what he never has to worry about?
I absolutely do. I think he's the 11th wealthiest senator or congressperson. Um, and I think that having incredible wealth means that you really don't understand what it's like to have to make decisions about paying for rent, paying for food, paying for gas. And so, it's he's out of touch and it's irresponsible. And I think we should all be concerned about the fact that he's unaware of what it's like to have a mortgage and need to get a second mortgage to replace your roof and things like that. He's just not thinking for us, serving us.
So let's get into some of what you did or would do. You mentioned the debt ceiling, and you mentioned the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans have been after the Affordable Care Act since it was passed. The ACA is something that Donald Trump absolutely promised that he would overturn. When he was elected, he ended up with a Republican majority in both the House and the Senate, which means, you have the opportunity to overturn it. They didn't do it. They didn't have an alternative plan, even though they said they would have an alternative plan. I know that's a long way of phrasing this question, but if the Affordable Care Act is going to go away, as John Hoeven has said it should happen, have you been able to find out what the alternative is, or do these individuals just go without health insurance?
I don't think that they care. And so, yeah, that is the alternative. It's repeal and I don't know. It's up to you now, right? Even now, it's not perfect, right? The ACA has things that need to be ironed out, improved. But it's better than people not having insurance and going into extraordinary debt, right? And whenever they have a medical emergency, it's okay to invest in each other. It's okay to invest in people. And the ACA is an imperfect investment that can be improved. So it doesn't need to be repealed.
Yeah, well, I'm with you, but then you knew that. When you take a look at, some of what's happening out there, because I mentioned earlier, Rick Becker's in this race, I predicted that it was going to drive John Hoeven to the right, that he was going to go even farther right. And the reason is because he's not used to being challenged within his own party. That being said, one of the best examples I can give right away that made absolutely no sense to me was, the no-fly list. You've got stewardesses or flight attendants, being punched. You've got the cockpit being rushed. You've got fellow passengers fighting because somebody doesn't like wearing a mask during this period that the airlines are requiring us to wear a mask. So let me ask you this. When John Hoeven came out and the individuals that had caused all this, that had struck these flight attendants, when he came out and said they don't belong on a no-fly list, what was your reaction to that?
Well, I don't think that I necessarily agree with that assessment. If they are being violent towards people in a contained space, then that's just not safe. They're not on a terrorist list, right? That's the distinction. But they don't know how to behave on a plane. And I've seen some of those videos, and it is horrific that people feel empowered to do that sort of thing without consequences, right? One of the things that I think I remember from a high school teacher's room is you're free to choose, right? But there are consequences that go along with that choice. And, one of the things that I think has, I remember 9/11 and what it felt like when all of that happened. I was very young. It was just a pivotal moment in my life. And, we've come a long way for making air travel safe again. And I think that's what we should do. We should make everybody feel safe.
So in that regards, there's just been a lot of conversation about the pandemic itself, about how the pandemic has been handled. Grade this on America as a whole. When we look at North Dakota, we've got a little over 50% of the people vaccinated. How do you think our leaders in North Dakota have done when it comes to making sure our hospital beds aren't full and our emergency staff isn't just flat out wore out?
I've seen health professionals here in Jamestown, and they're fatigued. So, if the health professionals are feeling fatigued, then I would have to say that the leaders really aren't doing a very good job handling the pandemic. I think every fatality that the state had is a mark in the column of failure.
Well,
Those people didn't have to die. There was a I think it was a 17-year-old woman in Williston that died, a child, right? She was one of the first people under 18 to die in the state. It still just hurts that happened. She's gone.
yeah.
We could have done better, and we can do better.
I'm up to 12 people. 12 people in my life that I know that contracted COVID, some of those or most of those prior to the vaccination coming out. I shouldn't say the vaccination, but, here's the situation to me, the denial of it. This is when leaders step up. I mean, this is when leaders lead, and we didn't get that in North Dakota. Do you pledge to me that if you get my vote, you're not going to sit quietly by and not take any risk whatsoever at a time like this?
I absolutely pledge to not do that. To be silent now is to be complicit in the virus winning, right? That's what that is, right? It doesn't take a lot for our elected leaders to stand up and go, we should do this for each other. That's all it's about. It's not about red or blue or, how angry you're feeling about this. It's about taking care of each other. And if enough people can say that message, then enough people start to buy into that behavior.
So, Katrina, people are going to want to know more about you. Where do they go to do just that?
KatrinaForUSSenate.com. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter. So
okay,
there too.
Thanks for giving us some time. I'm sure we'll talk more in the future.